Okay, everybody see my screen where it says First American Title at the top? Give me a thumbs up. And if you're not muted, let's everybody mute just until we're done with this part. So if you don't have an account at First American Title, you would go to register and you would put in your name. Get out of here. You put in your name, literally you're just filling this in, submit, and then you'll have your username and password. And then once you get it, you'll log on here. And then you'll come to the dashboard. And on the dashboard, let's start with buyer's net sheet, and then we'll also go to the seller's net sheet. So I'm clicking on buyer's net sheet, and this is going to be presented by you. And in the end, I have Jessie Reyes that's joined us from First Am. She's going to show you how to brand this net sheet to you and your logo for presenting to your client. So it's not going to say Cost First or First American at the top. It's going to have you and that you are presenting it. So I'm acting like I'm the realtor. I'm preparing it. I'm going to, just say 123 Main Street. And I'm going to do the sales price at $300,000. And I know you want to look at what your lender gave you as far as a pre-qual letter. And on the pre-qual letter, it should have the down payment and the loan amount. But if you're doing a sales price, let's say the pre-qual is for $325,000, but your sales price is $300,000. The key to focus on the pre-qual is, okay, what percentage down did this lender tell me that this buyer is going to do? So loan to value, my first loan, if my buyer is putting 10% down, my loan to value is 90%. If the borrower is putting 20% down, then my loan to value is 80%. So if my borrower is putting 25% down, my loan to value is 75%. So let's just act like we have let's just do something simple. Let's do 90% loan to value. The borrower is putting 10% down. The interest rate, this borrower has a 740 FICO score, great debt to income ratio. And you could always ask the buyer, the lender, what's an estimated rate? Now, the lender will come back and say, hey, listen, just know that this is not locked in until you get into contract. So this is really just an estimate because rates can change 5 times a day. Rates are they're plateauing right now. They have been for the last few months. So there's not much of changes going on right now, but I'm just going to plug in here 2.75%. This buyer's just got rock star credit. So my buyer is doing a 30-year mortgage. You'll also be able to know that by looking at the pre-qual letter. The loan amount is automatically adjusted to know that 90% of $300,000 is $270,000. So we don't have to do a lot of math here. Estimated closing date, you're writing this contract today. So you want your close of escrow not to be on a Sunday, but I'm recommending to my realtor partners to at least do a 35 to a 30-day close of escrow in this market right now. Talk with your lender. If it's us, which I hope it is, I'm totally biased, I know, but you'll want to do a 35-day at least escrow. Let's just say this buyer doesn't want to move in until the 13th. You've already talked to the seller. That date will be fine. So I'm going to plug in the 13th. Property taxes. I'm going to just show you what I do as a lender to look up property taxes. I don't always go off of the MLS of what the listing agent puts on there because sometimes it's wrong. Like, believe it or not, sometimes it's wrong. So I just try to double check and make things as accurate as possible. So if you go to Clark County Assessor's website, I'm gonna copy and paste this in the chat. This is something that you guys could save as a favorite on your desktop. This just goes right into where you need to go to look up the taxes. So with the taxes that I'm gonna do, one of my realtors signed up with List Reports with me this morning, and his address is 1910 Coralino Drive, and he's in Henderson. So I'm going to use that address. I'm going to submit here. Well, hell's bells. 1910, I spelled it wrong. Can you just smack me, Gina? Carolino, there we go. And I'm gonna submit, and I'm gonna go over to the parcel number. I'm gonna go scroll down, and I'm going to go to treasurer information. And right here is gonna be my number that I use for taxes, the 1901. So I'm gonna take that 1901, I'm gonna go back to my buyer's net sheet. I'm gonna plug in 1901 and 38 cents, I think it was. So the cool thing about this is that First American just plugs in all of the escrow fees that you'll need to know. Like escrow, it's usually 50-50, so it's already there as split. Owner's policy, it's typically paid by the seller. If for the owner's title policy, your buyer typically 99 times out of 100 pays that. You know, I've seen it on a couple of them, but it's typically, you know, 99 times paid by the seller. Lender's title policy is usually 99 times out of 100 paid by the lender. Now, this is where you have to talk to your lender on what they charge. So I'm just going to do this like this was a RateWise client, just because since I own it, I know their fees the best. So we don't charge any origination. We don't charge any processing fees. We don't charge a tax service, and we don't charge a doc prep. We don't charge underwriting. And the appraisal fee is typically, guys, with an FHA buyer or with a conventional buyer, it's $550. For an FHA buyer, it's $575, and for a VA buyer, it's $600. That's pretty good across the board. But let's just say this is a conventional buyer, so I'm going to plug in $50, and we don't charge a credit report. If you worked with a lender, another lender, you'd have to get their costs. We're one of the few that don't charge the cost to the borrower, but if you had a lender that did charge the processing, which is usually a standard of $995, and underwriting is usually about $595. So you make sure you're plugging those in so that your buyer has accuracy there. Then the recording fees, home warranty, these are things that you'd have to go and say, okay, are you having the seller pay for the home warranty? If you are, let's zero out the home warranty. Flood cert, that's right on there automatically. Endorsements, all of these are pretty accurate on not just First American. I mean, there's give or take a few $100s. Let's say you weren't using First American, you were using Old Republic. You could always call Old Republic and say, what are your exact fees? But if you get the gist here, you're going to be pretty right on. I'm going to show you ways that we're going to add some padding so that you're covered anyway, if you just estimated and you're not necessarily using First American for the title company. So the prepaids right here, this is basically says, okay, the seller has already paid for the previous 3 months of taxes. So your buyer has to reimburse them for whatever days if we close on November 13th, the seller would have paid for the taxes August. They would have paid August for the next 3 months. So if we're closing November 13th, we have to reimburse the seller another month and a half, plus we have to collect for the following quarter's taxes. So at least 3 months of taxes are going to be collected, and then whatever you're reimbursing the seller. I just say for simplicity, so that you don't have to be like, okay, let's pull out the calendar, let's try to figure out, how many months. And I just say always plug in 6. That's my method. You can do it or not do it. But if you plug in 6, this gives us the padding that we need at least by a month or 2 typically for mistakes. If you didn't estimate correctly for the title fees or whatever, if you're plugging in 6 months of taxes, it's usually padded. Months of insurance. This is estimating what the homeowner's insurance will be for the buyer by taking the typical amount of homeowner's insurance on a $300,000 property, and we're collecting 15 months. Why are we collecting 15 months? Because when we close escrow, we're going to make sure that the entire year is paid up front. A lender will always require the homeowner's insurance to be paid for the entire year. And then we want a few extra months to keep in our impound account. So that if the borrower's homeowner's insurance goes up, the lender doesn't have to scurry around and say, oh my gosh, we're $15 short to make sure that the next year's premium is paid in time. So they always over collect a few months in order to have that buffer. So the 15 months is always put in here. Let's say we're closing on the 13th of November. If you put 30 days of interest here, that's overestimating, because basically what this is saying is how many days in that month that you're closing do you have left over? So let's say if we're closing on the 11th of November, 13th of November, we have 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. You count all the way to the end of the month, and that ends up being 17 days. If I'm off by a day mathematically, sorry. You can put 17 days in here, and that's just assuming where you're going to close right on time on the 13th. You're not going to close a day early. You're not going to close a day late. So you're putting in the exact days. You can do that. My suggestion to, again, overestimate a little bit for the borrower and give a little bit of, extra days that you can, buffer that estimate. I just always suggest putting 30 days, a full 30 days. That technically means that we're gonna close as early as the 1st of November, and we're gonna collect the entire month of interest. Okay, so yeah, I'm overestimating by 17 days, but instead of 17 days at 350, I'm putting in 30. So what have I just done? I've just buffered the amount of funds for the borrower by $250. And honestly, guys, our business, I've always had the belief of under promise and over deliver, right? I mean, if they say, okay, gosh, I think that I'm going to have to come in with X amount, $35,783, and it ends up being $34,908, who's going to look like a stud that presented this estimate at the beginning, and then they're happy as can be because it all ended up, less. So anyway, that's just my belief, but you can do the exact days there. A lender never needs to collect 2 months of PMI. This automatically comes up. You can just delete that out of 2 months PMI. And then you've got your principal and interest, you've got your taxes that are taken directly from what you put in. You've got 1/12 of taxes, you've got your homeowner's insurance, you've got your PMI estimate here. Gina, if you can put the RateWise Mortgage, the old app in the chat, I don't know, or be able to get that over to the agents. In my RateWise app, there is a way for you guys to calculate the mortgage payment for the client that gives the accurate PMI. This 0.78 is just an estimate. PMI, I was gonna show you how to calculate PMI, and if you wanna try calculating yourself, you'd go to Essent Rate Finder, ESSENT Rate Finder, click on Rate Finder, and just start playing with the numbers, plugging in, loan number, or debt to income ratio, just assume 30. If you wanna just play with this, you'll see that the rate on PMI is different. It ranges, I did the calculations before our class, and if you have 740 FICO score and above, this actually turns out to be 0.44. If you have a 720 and above, this actually ends up being 0.53. So to be safe, if you want to just keep that 0.78 in there, go for it. Otherwise, have a conversation with the lender on what your PMI factor should be. If you've got a really price or payment sensitive client, to get that more accurate, you can reach out to your lender. With this property, you can, let's say there was a $25 HOA, and then this is where you'd put like the lids and SIDS, if there were any lids, SIDS. Let's say it's 56. You got a total monthly payment out of pocket of $1,579. Estimated tax prorations, and then you've got your total buyer's amount to bring in of $35,783. I'm going to quick go over to the seller's net sheet, where if you were a listing agent, this is what you would plug in. You've got a sales price of 300,000, not 3 million. That would be nice though, right? 300,000, and then you've got a buyer. Come on. You've got a conventional buyer at 90% loan to value, because we're going to emulate that, or do the same as what we just did. The 13th of November, you would ask your seller, how much do you owe on your house? Okay, Mr. Seller, you owe 127,000. And then again, these are automatically plugged in for what the normal is for the seller. You've got a 50-50 escrow fee. Owner's title policy is typically paid by the owner, so that's right on. Transfer tax, same thing. You would remove the reconveyance fee. That only really has to do with like hard money and back in the day. If you didn't have a termite inspection, you remove the termite. Remember, we're doing a conventional. And then all of these costs, you talk to your title company that you're using, but some charge the notary fee, some do not. And then this on the third column, this has to do with if your seller is paying for anything on behalf of the buyer. So if they're just saying, okay, the seller is going to pay $5,000 towards closing costs, that just plugged it in for you. And then you've got your total cost, because this is also considering the listing agent and the selling agent commission split there. So you might have a 2.5 percentage with the seller as the listing agent. You would adjust it there, and then it just comes right on with what your seller is going to net there. So I thought this was a really way easy way of showing how to present this to your client. And then you print, you saved a PDF, and then you can send out to your seller or your buyer. And Jesse, do you want to just say a couple words just to know how they can get in touch with you for how to brand this to them? I can't hear you, Jesse, if you're talking. Well, let's take it off share and
okay.
Let's.
I was muted, but I'm here. So.
Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. If you would like it, yes, the net sheet is very user friendly. You can actually text it if you're on the road. Many of us are on the road. You can text it to your client. You can also email it right from the website. The version that Kari showed is the desktop version. I love it. It's very user friendly, but we also have an app version if you're on the go. So your credentials would be exactly the same. So if you are interested, feel free to, there's 9 people on my team and we all cover the entire valley. So if you have a relationship with somebody on my team, feel free to reach out to them. And if you don't, you can write my phone number down, or I sent a flyer to Kari and Gina with my contact information. My cell phone number is 702-659-0800. Cost First is one of many ways that we could help you. And it works hand in hand with My First Stamp, which would also give you nationwide access to everything you need to know about that property. You can look up the entire title chain, the recorded documents, but truly the net sheet is a great way to let your buyer or your seller you can do a net sheet as you saw Kari present in just a few minutes and send it quickly. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And kudos to First American for having the easiest user-friendly net sheet for realtors out of 20 that I looked at. So congrats. We'll open it up for questions. Sorry, it went over by about 3 minutes on my part. But anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, hi Terry.
Hi, thank you for doing this.
Yes, of course.
You mentioned list reports. What is that?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. I just kind of like put a little bug right there, and then I knew somebody would ask me about it. So anyway, list reports is something that I pay for, that you can partner up with RateWise, and it gives you 26 marketing pieces on for your open houses. For if you go to listreports.com, and Gina can put it in the chat, but listreports.com, and it'll say, what lender do you want to partner with? And you would say Kari Phillips, RateWise Mortgage. You just type it in, and then I'll accept you as a partner. And then you have, again, 26 things that we can co-brand with each other. That's just the start of it. So there's a webinar on it that is super easy, user friendly, less than 30 minutes. So I'm like anything more than 30 minutes, I want to, on a webinar. So it's not bad. And it kind of teaches you a little bit about it, but it's free to you, and please utilize it. It'll make your open house flyers or your presentations to your buyers really look nice. Kelly and Leslie, did you guys need anything? Oh, okay. You just took yourself off talking. Anybody else have any questions? Please provide my phone number and email. Is that me? Gina will put in my contact information. If you guys don't have the RateWise Mortgage app, so if you've been in the classes, we've talked about this before, but you go to RateWise Mortgage in the App Store, and you plug in, RateWise is one word. If you download the app, which of course is free, if you have any clients that as you notice, I made it kind of a point that we don't charge any lender fees on that buyer's agent or that buyer's net sheet. That is for real. There's no catch there. I just make less on every loan so that I don't ever have to lose a loan. I haven't lost a loan in a year and a half due to pricing. So I do that so I don't have to feel like I'm wasting my time, it's also a way to keep every buyer, and also for my realtors and I to always work together, where you don't have to work with another lender if we've got a relationship. So if you want a buyer that's pre-qualified, to get pre-qualified, you start in the app, you go to refer a client. When you submit, it goes right into me. It goes right on the top of my priority queue, myself, my other one or two people on my team. We're reaching out to the buyer, getting them pre-qualified, sending you out a letter. So it's that easy, and you will always get status. So if nobody has any other questions, we'll end this 4 minutes early. Jessie, thank you so much for, just kudos to Jessie, because I called her at, I think, 10:58 this morning and said, we've chosen your net sheet to present. So, and she's like, let me get my makeup on. I'm like, you don't need makeup. You're beautiful, but you look beautiful. And thank you for joining so last minute. But Jessie, by the way, I'll give her a quick little play. She's super on top of things. She's never flaky. I can always get a hold of her. Always, always. And she's not a pushy marketing rat. She's just, I'm here when you need me. And I love that about her. So, take that with what you're out. Thank you very much, Jessie. And thanks for coming, you guys. Yes, thanks for coming. And again, I've learned on my Zoom etiquette, as a host, I'm not supposed to leave my own party first. So I'm going to wait till all of you guys get off, and then I'll get off. But thanks for coming. Bye.